Hi, my name is Susanna Rothley, and I am interested in the early childhood professional role. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to interview for this position. For question number one, what drew me to the early childhood profession? From an early age, I knew I always wanted to work with children in some capacity, but it wasn't until later did I think about doing early childhood. I grew up with two older brothers and three younger sisters, and I distinctly remember watching them in school and how differently each of them handled the same courses. That's when I realized that learning wasn't just a one-size-fits-all approach. There's no right or wrong way to learn. We just might need to adjust our teaching approaches to get students to the same goal. However, modern day schools don't seem to adjust teaching approaches often, and whether that's because of lack of staff or possibly efficiency, and this leaves some of the students falling behind. I had always thought that if you don't understand or you don't ever grasp those basic concepts, then you're going to stay behind in school. 4 years ago, my mom showed me an opening for a preschool aide in a GSRP classroom. And I was hoping to get into elementary, but I thought I would give it a try. And I interviewed and I got the job. And the second that day started, I knew that that was exactly where I was meant to be. As I continued to take courses and gain more experience, I realized how important an early quality childhood experience is and the positive impact that we can make on students and their families through this time that we have together. That same year, I switched my major from getting a bachelor's in elementary education to a bachelor's in early childhood education. I think what really drew me in is the excitement that children have at this age for learning. They're curious, they're natural learners, they love coming to school and being in the classroom. I love how honest they are and unafraid to try new things. And another side to the early childhood profession, at least at my school, is the ability that we have to connect with the families. And I truly feel like with this job, I am connected to not only the kids in my classroom, but their families as well. And seeing the impact that you could make on a child and their family in just 1 year is truly an amazing thing. Question number two, I consider my chief responsibility as an early childhood professional, first and foremost, I think that the number one responsibility is safety. Academics aside, creating an environment that is safe, inclusive, and developmentally appropriate is my biggest responsibility. I'm a strong believer that the children in our care should also be taken care of physically, emotionally, and cognitively. I'm also a strong believer that learning looks different for every child, and that each child might need support in different areas. Developmentally appropriate practice is one of those primary responsibilities in the classroom for me as an early childhood professional. One of the NAEYC standards, Standard 6, specifically speaks about professionalism and how that can be demonstrated. I feel like this is a great reminder on how to conduct ourselves in the classroom setting. A few of the things that I really stand behind are continuing professional development as well as play-based learning experiences. I had an early childhood professional specialist who, whenever we would meet, she would sit with us and she would ask us how we thought we could improve. She would give her input as well. And then she would pull trainings that she could find based off of what our answers were. And there were some teachers that would groan at the thought of going to more trainings. They've been doing this for years. And she would always respond, "Why would you want to cut yourself short of your potential?" She is no longer my ECS, but this sticks with me. There's always more you can learn, and there's always something we can be better at. Our responsibility is to help each child in our care reach success, whatever that might look like for that child. I don't know why we would want to do it without all of the tools in our toolbox. Question number three, the role of collaboration in professional practice and addressing collaboration with other professionals as well as families. One of the aspects of being a professional in early childhood field is active collaboration with both families and other professionals. In my current building, we are very fortunate and we have all of our services right inside the building with us. This means throughout the day, we're regularly communicating with other professionals who are also working with our same kids. So we have those same goals in mind, and we're often working together. We also have a lot of other classrooms in our building, which means we're regularly intertwining our classrooms with other kids' classrooms, whether this is outside time or in our big room space. So throughout the day, I do connect with a lot of my coworkers. And throughout the day, I also connect with a lot of other early childhood professionals that have other specialties, such as the speech or social work. The NAEYC Professional Standards document is something that I do regularly refer to because it's brought up frequently throughout my work days, as it's something that my building does hold highly. Engaging in that continuous and collaborative learning is one of the areas in this document that we can find under being a professional. Being newer to the field, I think that I rely more heavily on my coworkers as I'm still working on better understanding the basics of the early childhood field. I feel like I turn to my coworkers a lot for resources and strategies to help improve me in my classroom as well as to give out to my families. In my experience, the people that I work with are also always trying to find the best way to help the children in our building, and they're happy to collaborate and share ideas whenever they can. Collaboration with families is just as important too, and I have found that sometimes there are things that we see in school that the families are not seeing at home, and vice versa. And without that active collaboration and that communication, we might not have ever overlapped that information. Keeping an open line of communication with families, I think it can be extremely beneficial to the success of the kids in our care. Question number 4 is what strategies I routinely use to ensure that I am being critically reflecting on my own growth as an early childhood professional. One of the strategies that I routinely use is ongoing professional development. My current program is monitored by Oakland Schools. So throughout the year, they provide lots of trainings and they cover a wide variety of topics. And they're all given by trained, informed professionals that are in the early childhood field. And my current job is awesome, and they do a great job, and they always allow us to take trainings that they deem appropriate, and they'll put it under their dime. Gaining new knowledge and staying up to date on research is some of my top priorities as an early childhood professional. And I think that as an EC, it is our responsibility to stay informed and get the most information we can, and do so that we can be the most successful versions of ourselves. Self-reflection is something else that I do try to stay vigilant on. On Fridays, when we have the time, I write down my struggles for the week, professionally and personally. Oftentimes, these things overlap. What was the most difficult part of my week? If it was a student behavior, I dig into some strategies to improve that behavior. But oftentimes, I feel like I've found that I could have acted differently in a situation, because I feel that in the moment, it's so easy to make that quick decision. But looking back, it might not always have been the right decision. It might have just been the quickest way or the easiest thing to say. I also have a bad habit of bringing my work home with me. If there was something that I did or I didn't do, I tend to dwell on it for longer than I should. And I think this is why reflection is so important, so that we can figure out the cause and find the solutions rather than sitting with it and worrying about it. Using my colleagues as my guide is another way that I keep myself in check. At the end of the day, I feel like we find ourselves lingering in the hall, swapping stories. And although I do feel like sometimes this is just good to have that venting session, it also allows me to reflect on the decisions that I made that day or that week. And it allows me to gain insight on situations that I might not have experienced yet and hear how another professional has handled that situation. My coworkers are really great, and they're not always just there for a laugh, but they've always been there when I needed advice or guidance, and they do so without judgment. They aren't afraid to tell me to try new things, and I think that as professionals, if we're open to hearing that, constructive criticism, it's something that can only make us better. Question number 5 is briefly describing an issue that might be the focus of current or future advocacy efforts and explain why advocacy is a hallmark of professionalism in the early childhood field. This is something that I'm currently dealing with in my program that I'm very passionate about because in Michigan, our governor has signed off on preschool for all. This would mean universal pre-K for all children in Michigan, regardless of their income. And as an early childhood professional, this is something that's really excited me. I truly think that this is an amazing change that's coming to Michigan. And I've always felt that the earlier we're able to intervene and get children that quality education, the better off they're going to be in the long run. The idea is that by 2027, all preschool age students will receive free schooling. However, with this change comes a lot of concern. My major concern is that the program's quality is going to be compromised with the change. Just because the program is going to be universal and it's going to be free for all, it doesn't mean it's going to be necessarily beneficial. We currently have one early childhood specialist that oversees the 6 GSRP classrooms in just our building. She also works in 3 different districts and monitors those classrooms as well. Her job is to make sure the staff in the room are trained, they meet the qualifications, they're teaching developmentally appropriate practice, and she comes in regularly for observation to make sure our program is meeting GSRP standards, our high school curriculum standards, in each of our classrooms. With this said, I don't believe that it's possible to get every educator in every school up to the standards that we already have in place to give each child that quality education by 2027. If this is the case, it ruins the entire premise of providing that quality education at a young age. And although I might not be able to make the changes in the government in Michigan, I'm able to voice my opinion in my own school, and I have been continuing and I will continue to vouch for the staff in our building to get the trainings that they need to maintain that quality education for our building. I think advocacy is a hallmark of professionalism because it shows our commitment to the job and our desire to truly help the children and the families in our communities. And I think that this job, that if you choose it, you're attached. Those connections to you and your families is one that pushes you to want more for them. The NAEYC Standard 6 speaks about professionalism and how we have a responsibility to involve ourselves and serve as informed advocates for young children, families, and in the profession. There's another piece right under that in this section that states that early childhood professionals understand the profession's distinctive values, history, knowledge base, and mission. I think that sentence is exactly why advocacy is the hallmark of the profession. Do we want to understand the reasons why teaching this way has become a standard? Do you believe in the mission? Because if so, why are you continuing your role in this field? The more I experience this profession, the more I want to learn. My goal is to continue building these connections with the families that I serve and advocate for them as long as that I am in this role. I want to be the best version of an early childhood professional that I can be, and I never want to stop striving to do better and be a better version of myself. Thank you for allowing me the time and the opportunity to interview for this role.